In this video, I'd like to talk about the delicate art of balancing between two extreme ends of a spectrum when it comes to finding names and making thumbnails for video, between very enticing or very informative, and kind of the downside on both ends. So let's start with the enticing side, right? So it's nice to have an attractive, enticing title and thumbnail because it's good to make a case for why the potential audience might be interested in this. We only have so much time and so much attention, so like for me, it's totally legitimate that you should kind of put some effort into explaining to an extent why someone would want to engage with your content. Now, the problem is if you kind of go too far, right, or if you make it too enticing, you can start veering into a misleading territory, right? For example, with clickbait, where in this case it's like kind of deceptive. But even then, if you're just like only focusing on being attractive, you can kind of lose some of the accuracy or explanation of what you're actually talking about, and this can create some disappointment and also just make it harder to kind of engage with your content after the first phase of discovering it. On the other hand, if you make it very informative, but there's nothing enticing, attractive about it, on the plus side, it's pretty clear what it is about, and it's easy to browse it, to search for it, to find it again, to remember what it's talking about. But it can be pretty boring, and also, some topics might interest people, but they'll only interact with it if they know it exists, if you don't kind of make some effort to explain why they might be interested, or you know how it can apply to different contexts. And so that's kind of the push and pull between those two extremes. Another component or layer that adds to this kind of dilemma is somewhat of an artist versus entrepreneur struggle. And so, this kind of a general um, dichotomy between like the artist who wants to share a specific vision they have inside them, and they don't really care that much about the need of the audience, or the market, the public. It's really inwards focused and wanting to express what's inside of you. And then there's more the entrepreneur focus, which is more about kind of what does the market, the audience want, and meeting those needs, kind of creating content, products, services that gives the people what they want. And to an extent, you could also just think about it as a kind of an author orientation, where you're kind of focusing about how you want to display your ideas, how you want to express your vision, or an audience orientation where you're more concerned with like how will other people benefit and interact with it. In this case, well, at least for me, maybe some other people will disagree, but I would tend to link the more informative aspect of branding, so to speak, with the more author orientation. And so for me, my by default, I tend to fall definitely more on the artist slash author spectrum, where I'm kind of mono focused on my own vision without, and then how other people might interact with it just kind of comes as a second consideration. I get pretty attached to the specific way I want to kind of name ideas, or to an extent, there's a bit of a sacrifice that's made when you kind of change a title to make it appealing for people who might not know what it's about, or um, an example for me in the like author orientation space is, for example, one of my favorite bloggers, John Nerst. Like if I look at some uh, of my favorite articles of his, like the names are terrible in terms of enticingness. Okay, like partial narratives and partial derivatives. No one is going to click on that for the title, or you need to have some additional context. Nobody's going to like, I mean, or very, very few people are going to find that by, kind of typing keywords in a search bar. Signal and correctives, same. Wordy weapons of Izot alloy, like that. Like you probably don't even know how to spell that just based on me reading it. Maybe it's my accent, but so these were like, and because I've read them, I know that they're a good description for the content, and I understand why they're called this way. And I personally don't have a problem with it now that I found the content. But like some external person is never going to find them, right? And I think that some of his most popular articles that where he kind of got some traction were based on some more, like on some controversy between Sam Harris and another person's whose name I don't remember, but so it was kind of a current event, and that drove attention, and then people find his other stuff. And I think another thing that happens is because a lot of the ideas I want to talk about are ideas that I've been working on in my own um, like second brain. It's like basically like a set of interconnected notes, and I've all given them names, and I'm used to thinking about them with the names I've given them, and so I'm pretty attached to these names. If we take the example of my own blog, you can see that I kind of waver in between those two ends. So for an example of one post that's pretty appealing, right? So, or the title is, it's easy, you could find it if you search for it, is how to set up a quick, free, and easy exercise routine, right? It kind of answers a specific need. Some people might be looking for something like that, right? But then if we look at others of my posts where I'm I'm kind of just using the name I think is good to describe my concept, we got ideological imperialism, just triangulation. Like if you don't know, basically, if you haven't read the post, you don't really know what I'm talking about, or you might have a bit of an idea. But now I try to explain more in the description. But because I'm kind of attached to my name, I'm like, no, this is the right way to describe it. And I feel that if I were to change the name to something that some people might be interested in, that might drive attention, like, yeah, I don't know, like for ideological imperialism, it could be like, why, like, this is going to be a terrible name because it won't be keyword optimized, but something like, why you should stop trying to push your ideas or beliefs on everybody else. Uh, maybe like why you should try to avoid pushing your belief on everybody else if you want to be less annoying, or I don't know, this is kind of a silly title, but I feel like it's a form of bastardization, or like I'm kind of selling it out in a certain way. It's like I don't. There's some resistance within me because it feels like it's not accurate. And the other thing that kind of annoys me with that titles that are only appealing, kind of like top 10 reasons why, blah blah blah, all about like how to do or why you want to do this, these types of titles, is that sometimes it's talking about a specific concept. So and then you like that article or this blog post, this video, whatever, and you want to find it again because you thought there were some interesting ideas, and then it's a nightmare to find it because it's got a stupid name, or maybe the name is like this super vague, like, oh, why you would want to do this, or like like something that appeals to base instincts, like do this or everybody will hate you. And then maybe sometimes they put like the actual title of the real thing they're going to be talking about inside the thumbnail, but so it's in within the text, it's a caption, so you can't search for it afterwards, and it's a night, you gotta spend a lot of time to find it. So there's kind of these two edges where if you don't make it enticing enough, nobody will ever know it exists. But if you don't make it informative, clear, or accurate enough, then it's a nightmare to find it again. So there's like discoverability versus how retrievable it is. And like I've several times been annoyed because I couldn't retrieve an interesting piece of content because the branding has nothing to do with the actual content, to an extent. So I feel like I've got a lot of ambivalence. And so that's why I've been having some comments on some of my titles, but I've kind of tried to have my cake and eat it too. So, like, for a few of my videos, the more philosophical ones, where I'm kind of describing a concept, I've put the first half of the title is an enticing version that's like who that might drive interest, and then the second is usually like a primer to or on specific concept. So for example, with my existential bad face video that blew up, so to speak, at least relatively to my sizes, is done way better than all of my other videos. The first segment is how do normal people let themselves become monsters, or something like that. That's kind of like, ooh, what's that all about? And then, so that's kind of, and that's at the beginning to drive interest. But then I kind of append at the end a more, accurate version, which is a primer on existential bad face. Because then, after they watch the video, if someone does watch the video, that's what they will remember. Well, I mean that, and other topics I could talk about, like the Nuremberg defense and the Miller experiment. I mean, maybe I could kind of avoid doing those clunky long titles if I just put some of the names of the concept in the description. I'm not sure, but that's kind of the explanation for why I've been doing this for people that find it strange. I've also been thinking about this dilemma between enticing and informative when it comes to my thumbnails. My thumbnails are some of the best or the highest quality part of my content so far, like based both on my own feelings and other people's feedback. and like I'm pretty good at them. I do them pretty quickly, and it's also fun to do them. But the problem I think is that they might kind of set some wrong expectations to an extent, because like one of the best practice, I've watched different videos on how should do YouTube content, and one of the things they say is because you don't want to create disappointment and anger, it's good when the thumbnail directly kind of translate into the beginning of the video. So for example, you see something on the thumbnail and then you will see it at the very beginning of the video. And so, it feels continuous and you haven't been lied to. In the same way that you should kind of reinstate, I think that's the best practice too, the title of your video at the beginning, or like that you're going to be talking about this topic to, reassure the viewer that you haven't been misleading them. I've been using more symbolical thumbnails, but the thing is, because of that, it doesn't really translate to the video. And so I think that the range of things you might expect is higher than if I was just to use my face, or to an extent, right? Because like if you just have like this kind of symbolic different drawings that look pretty good, or like graphics that look pretty good, you might be expecting like a pretty in-depth video essay with like high production value, like some of the professional YouTubers, and so you don't really know what to expect. I think what could help set better expectations for my content is just to put my face and like the background, like basically make it clear in the thumbnail that these are going to be, not very high production value talking head type videos. I think part of my resistance for doing that is that I didn't really want to plaster my face on all the thumbnails. Another thing is also it kind of restricts the type of things I can do with my thumbnails. Or if I start doing this, and I might start doing this in order to kind of better set expectations, it kind of restrains a little bit my freedom with what I can do visually. The thumbnails will probably go dip a little bit in quality, which is a bit of a shame and maybe a little bit less fun for me to do. But I guess I'll have to experiment with that. Yeah, like basically, I think the main resistance though is just I felt a little bit shy. Like I guess I don't want people that to recognize me. Now, I mean, the odds are very small, and be like, oh, this guy, I know him, and oh, he does this type of content. I didn't know that. That's, I think, what I was trying to avoid. But I think maybe I can try and find, because I've been watching other talking head type YouTubers, and it's clearer from their thumbnail what the type of content will be. So I think I can probably take some inspiration there. Another thing that I kind of didn't like too much about putting my face is that a pretty typical way to use a face on a thumbnail is to use like this super exaggerated facial expression, like it'll be like, oh, or something, and it feels very inauthentic. But I think I might have found a way to kind of uh, to still do facial expressions that are authentic, because as it so happens, I kind of like doing stupid faces. And I don't know, it's funny for me. And in the same way that part of kind of my motivation for doing good thumbnails is that I kind of find them funny, or there's some, there's like some aspect of it that I find funny. I mean, you might not share my sense of humor, but anyway, it's kind of silly and goofy, and for some reason, silly and goofy stuff just motivates me like nothing else. So if I kind of do stupid faces and I don't, without making like in a way where they're over exaggerated, but not in a super, like slimy way, just like in the same way I do in real life, because I kind of like, being excessive. I kind of like hyperbole and euphemism, and that goes the same with facial expressions. So maybe that's something I can kind of work on. I think the thumbnail for this video won't be very good because I didn't get blessed by inspiration, so it's probably just going to be my face and a little bit of a few captions. But yeah, I think that's kind of something I'm going to try and experiment with. That ties back also into the ideas of public journaling that I'm going to be talking in other videos I'm doing right now. But they might not be published at the same times, but it should be published in the near future. I think my motivation for doing this video is, on one hand, I kind of wanted to order my own thoughts about this topic. And also, I think, so based on the feedback that some people give me, I think there's sometimes some mismatched expectations on what I'm trying to do or am not trying to do with my content. And so I think that I wanted to kind of align a little bit better as expectations of what the content on this channel is going to be like and going to stay like. Probably, most likely. Yeah, and also maybe to clarify, yeah, why I do things the way I do them. If you've got some thoughts or suggestions, you can always feel free to comment them. I don't promise I'll implement any of them, but it could feed some of my thinking. And yeah, I think that's about it. Thanks for watching.